This video is for folks who are looking for a budget guitar, whether you're a beginner or you're an intermediate. For beginners, I do recommend not spending over, I don't know, $300 on your first guitar, because there's always the possibility that you'll lose interest, and most people do, because it's an uphill climb to get to where you want to be, and you'll get frustrated. But putting all that aside, this is the Davison. And I don't know what the specific model name is called, but if you go on Amazon, this is one of the best-selling starter guitars. It's priced at $99, and it includes this guitar, an amp, a very puny, tiny, crappy amp, and a gig bag, picks, strap, etc. Please avoid this. Do not buy this guitar. And if you're thinking, well, I only have $100 to spend, I will give you much, much better options. You can buy a $100 guitar that's 50 times better than this. This is just a company out trying to make money, I suppose. Obviously, it's made in China, but before you guys jump on the made in China bashing bandwagon, Chinese factories have come out with some amazing guitars. I mean, I used to have a 50s Squire Classic Vibe that the neck felt better than any Mexican Strat that I've ever tried. You really ought to check out the Chinese Squires, and there's also Chinese Fenders now under the Modern Player name. So this guitar here, well, what's wrong with it? Where to start? The neck has a bunch of spurs in the back. It's anything but smooth. It's the complete opposite of smooth. The tuners are not bad. They're actually not bad. The main gripe with this guitar is, number one, it doesn't intonate well, even after I've adjusted the saddles. It doesn't intonate well, and it's painful to play. This is actually more painful to play than some acoustics, and this will frustrate a lot of beginners. First off, it's got a maple neck with a glued-on fretboard that I'm not sure is maple. And it's unlacquered. Now, the unlacquered fretboards on Squires, the maple unlacquered fretboards on Squires, I can deal with. They're okay. These, it feels there's so much friction that it's almost you have to make such an effort to bend a note. So please avoid these Davison guitars. What are some other options? Well, let's say you only have $100 to spend. That's fine. Let's say you have $150, okay? You can buy a new Squire Affinity Bullet, which is their cheapest Strat-like guitar. It's much better than this. You see, this only has one humbucker. There's no switches, which wouldn't be a problem. And this humbucker is actually not bad. It's just the guitar just doesn't stay in tune. I mean, I have tuned it open by the open strings, and here's how a G major sounds. It doesn't intonate well when you move the bar up the neck, and that's a product of the design. Now, the neck is warped, and there is a truss rod that you can use to adjust that, but it's just not worth it. This guitar will make a lot of beginners just get frustrated and give up, and that's the last thing you want to do when you're actually intent on learning how to play. So if you do get this guitar, you're going to do one of two things. After a month, you're going to give up, or if you're really, really masochistic, because again, this is very painful, you will drop this and then spend $200 or $300 on a newer guitar. The general rule when buying guitars is you should spend about 50% more of what you think you should spend. So if you think you should spend $100 on a starter guitar, you should probably spend $150. But for $100, you can get a guitar that's 50 times better than this, and that's called the Squire Affinity Strat. I've played quite a few, and they're lightweight, but not lightweight like this, meaning this is probably not even wood. There's a ding there. There's a ding that I created accidentally, like right there, and it's pretty deep, and I can't tell that there's actually any wood in here. You know, it feels plastic. And again, the main thing is it's just so painful to play. So for $100, you can get a Squire Bullet Strat, brand new. On Musician's Friend, they have sales all the time, and GuitarCenter.com. Or you can purchase a used Squire Affinity, or a used, Squire Deluxe, Squire Standard. They're all tons better than this. Not just because they have 3 pickups and they have 5 pickup switch positions, but because they're much better quality. I mean, and keep in mind the Squires are probably also made in China, but they're much better quality than the Chinese factory that churns out this mess. So please stay away from this. So Squire is one option. So you might think to yourself, what about the amp? Do I have to spend $100 on an amp? No, you don't. Amps are cheap used, and as long as it works, you shouldn't have to worry about it, breaking down on you, because the technology in amps these days, they're as reliable as televisions, basically. So you can buy a cheap practice amp for $40 new, or you can buy a cheap practice amp for $15 to $20 new. I'm talking about Fender branded amps, like a Fender Frontman. This guitar is just stay away from this. Another recommendation is the Yamaha Pacifica. Now, the Yamaha Pacifica is going to run you $179 for the 012 V model. This is a 112 model, and these are really nice guitars. They are a super strat design, meaning they have 2 singles and 1 humbucker. So this one actually costs $299, and this is going back to the factory, and I'm going to be getting an Epiphone traditional limited edition Les Paul instead. The reason this is going back is, again, if you want to buy a Yamaha, you need to buy it in the store. You need to actually go to Guitar Center or your local music shop and pick out the Yamaha from the store. Otherwise, it's probably going to be defective. This is a $300 guitar. I mean, this is not a cheap guitar, although some would consider it cheap. But, it's got quality control issues, like you hear that? The nut is all cut, messed up on like 3 strings, so that when you ever so slightly bend it, you get that sound in the nut, which is not a good thing. But Yamaha Pacificas are great guitars. Another option is to buy a Jackson, like I reviewed in my prior video, that rents $200, and that's a guitar that you can keep for life. That's how good quality it is. But again, if you're on a tighter budget, as we all are at certain points, I would recommend you to get a Squire Bullet Strat or a Squire Affinity. And they're on sale every other week for $100, sometimes less, brand new. And for the Squires, you don't have to actually go into the store and pick one. The quality control is much better than the Yamaha. This should have never left the factory, because the nut is absolutely defective. For a $300 guitar, it should have never left the factory. So, in closing, this is just not a good instrument to start on or to learn on. Again, the main gripe is it doesn't stay in tune, and even when you do get it in tune, the pitches change from their appropriate pitch depending on where you are on the fretboard. The second main gripe is that it's painful to play. It's actually more painful than an acoustic guitar. And I don't know what, it's not the strings, because I changed the strings, it's the tension. The tension is overly, it has too much tension. It should have the same tension as a Strat. I have a Mexican MIM Strat, and it should have the same tension because it's the same neck. It's the same scale length, 25.5. But it's just painful. It's more painful than an acoustic, because at least on an acoustic, on the higher pitched strings, the high B and E strings, at least those are thicker, whereas these are 9s and they dig into your fingers. Now, if you were to put 10s or 11s on this guitar, it would be even more difficult to bend and hence more painful. So avoid this, even though it's the first choice on Amazon, basically, when you type in electric guitar. Just avoid this. Buy something from Squier. Squiers also have starter packs that are, I think they're priced between 150 to 200. Okay, not that buying a cheap guitar is bad, but this is a very low quality cheap guitar. We're extremely lucky, people who play guitar, we're extremely lucky to live in a time where there are such great guitars for such great deals. For example, the Classic Vibe series, you can get them for $350, and the necks feel just as good as any American Strat that I've played, which costs $1,400. And so you can get a lot of great guitars for in the 150 to 200 price range, if you if you know what you're getting. With Davison, no. You should buy it from a reputable music company. Even if that company is owned by Fender or Gibson, as most of them are, you should not purchase something like this. This is a piece of junk, and it will stall your playing. You could spend the same amount of money and get something that'll last you for years. I have a good friend of mine. He has 2 American Strats. He has about 4 Epiphone Les Pauls. He has a PRS. And he still has 2 Bullet Strats that he uses a lot. He still uses them. After he got to a certain level of his playing, he modded them, and they're great guitars. I got to play them. They're awesome guitars. Bullet Strats are awesome guitars, much better than this Davison junk. So if you've already purchased this and it's doing well for you, that's great. I understand that every guitar is different, and I may have gotten a lemon, but I don't think so. I think it's the way quality control is with all their guitars. If you look at the reviews on Amazon, the negative reviews, and keep in mind, the positive reviews on Amazon are, not to sound like I know everything, but the positive reviews on Amazon are usually people who bought this for their children, or younger players, or people first getting into learning guitar. People first getting into learning guitar. Now, for those people, they don't have a good understanding of a great guitar versus a good guitar versus a crappy guitar. They don't know how a neck is supposed to feel. These fret ends are super sharp. So I would read the negative reviews first. And as you can see, I've played the crap out of this guitar. If you can see the dust stains, over the over the pickup. There's a bunch of dust. I played the hell out of this for about a month, and then I just gave up. This wasn't my first guitar. My first guitar was actually a Yamaha Pacifica from 10 years ago. But this was a gift from a friend, and it's what got me back into playing guitar. So I will give it that. But yeah, just avoid this. The Jackson that I reviewed in a prior video, that is a fantastic guitar for $200. If you're into that kind of a guitar, and by that I mean it has a rather flat radius. It's compound, but it's still flat. It's 12 inches here and goes to 16, and it's got jumbo frets, which I'm not a huge fan of because it makes it more difficult to slide. Another option, again, is the Yamaha Pacifica. They sell for as low as $150 on sale. And they are fantastic guitars, but they do have quality control issues. And lastly, the best option, I think, is a Squier Bullet Strat or a Squier Affinity. And you can buy a used or a very cheap amp online. That's basically it. Oh, and about used guitars, unless you have a friend who plays guitar or who's familiar with, fixing guitars, something like that, I wouldn't buy a used guitar if you're a beginner, because again, it's difficult to know when you're a beginner what to look out for. And so I would recommend buying a new guitar, but a Yamaha or a Jackson, or the best, I think, a Squier Affinity or a Squier Bullet Strat. And you can go the used route when you purchase an amp, because you don't really need a new amp if you're on a budget. So that's basically it.